evaluation of the subject happen right before the test begins, making sure that the participants have clarity and are fully prepared to take part in the tests. This is when the researcher makes sure that the participants are 100% aware of what they need to do. So this kind of links with informed consent and the health and safety procedures. When the researchers have got the participants' subject permission, the participants must be prepared to take part in the experiment. They must be physically fit and must be aware of what they need to do when they are doing the experiment for safety reasons. In this experiment, the researcher made sure that the participants were comfortable and that they knew every detail about what the experiment was. They made sure that the participants were physically prepared. However, if the researcher did not do this, then the participants might be psychologically harmed due to anxiety if they don't know what they are doing and if they don't want to, which will affect their confidence. If this was to happen, which it didn't in this scenario, but if it was, the consequences for the researcher is primarily they need to do some ethical training. This is because they need to understand that the participants have the right to know what they're doing so that psychological harm doesn't come to the participants. For the establishment, there might be bad publicity due to the way the researcher has treated the participants. But in this situation, there was clarity, and the participants knew straight before they were going to complete the experiment what was expected of them, and the researcher made sure 100% they wanted to do the experiment as well. So they were physically prepared and psychologically prepared for the experiment, which caused them not to be distressed and no psychological harm to come to them during this experiment. And this is good for the researcher and establishment, as no legal action will be taken place against them, and the researcher won't need to do any ethical training because they know how to treat the participants. Sort of linking to this, the researcher has a responsibility. So the researcher's responsibility is to ensure that the health and safety procedures are in place and they are organised when conducting the experiment. It is primarily the researcher's responsibility to ensure that no physical or psychological harm comes to the participants. So they're responsible for the overall conducting of the experiment, but also before the experiment, during the experiment, and after the experiment. So no harm comes to the participant, and all procedures are in place. In this scenario, the researcher took responsibility for everything in the experiment. They made sure that there was a correct ratio of participants to researchers in order to keep everyone safe, so that if injury did occur, one person could give all their attention to the injured person and all the other participants would be safe. They also made sure that the participant that didn't feel well was cared for, therefore taking responsibility for the participant's safety and well-being. They also took care of the participants' psychological well-being as well, as they didn't force anyone to do the experiment, and they weren't intimidating towards them. So the participants were comfortable and at ease when doing the experiment. This is good, as no legal action or any action would take place against the researcher or establishment, because the researcher has made sure every procedure is in place so that they can't be told that they did something wrong. And as a result, the participants were happy and safe during this experiment. But if the researcher didn't do this and didn't take responsibility for the experiment as a whole, then there can be a range of different consequences depending on how severe the injury to the participant was or what procedures they didn't follow. For instance, it is the researchers' and establishment's responsibility to make sure the experiment that they are conducting has ethical clearance. If this was not put in place, then the researcher could go to prison and they would lose their basis accreditation due to breaking the law. However, if the researcher didn't do a debriefing after an experiment where there was deception, then the researcher would get a formal reprimand due to the fact that the participants have the right to know about their results and what has happened in the experiment. Also, these consequences would apply to the establishment, as no ethical clearance could result in prison due to them breaking a law, and fines as well due to them breaking a law as well, and a bad reputation if the researchers didn't do a debriefing, because then nobody would want to be in future studies due to the fact that the researcher didn't treat the participants with respect and care.